In this video I am working on a 2008 Ford Escape and replacing the water connector assembly, which is a common failure point on these vehicles. Over time the rubber seal on this connector can crack, harden or become pinched, and once that seal fails, coolant will begin to leak. In many cases the leak does not drip straight to the ground and instead runs down the engine and collects on other components, making it harder to identify. In my situation I noticed coolant dripping from this area and also saw coolant sitting on top of the transmission, which helped confirm the source of the leak. Before starting the repair, the engine must be completely cool because the cooling system is pressurized and hot coolant can cause burns. The first step is draining the coolant. I placed a bucket underneath the radiator and opened the drain plug to let the coolant flow out. The drain plug on this vehicle is easily accessible from the back side of the radiator, which makes draining straightforward. While the coolant is draining, I begin removing components that block access to the water connector. The air filter housing sits directly above the area, so I loosened the bolt holding it and moved it out of the way. After that I disconnected the intake pipe from the throttle body by loosening the clamp and carefully pulling it off. I unplugged the map sensor and shifted the intake assembly to the side. I did not fully remove the intake system and I did not remove the PCV hose. With the intake moved aside, the water connector becomes accessible. The next step is removing the hoses connected to it. There is a heater core hose and an upper radiator hose attached to this connector. Both hoses are held on by spring clamps that are positioned in tight and awkward locations. A flexible hose clamp remover tool makes this much easier because regular pliers are difficult to use in these spots. Using the clamp tool, I compressed the clamps and slid them back so the hoses could be removed without damage. The water connector itself is mounted on the side of the engine and secured with 4 bolts. Some of these bolts are difficult to see but can be felt by hand. An 8mm socket with a long extension works best for reaching them. All 4 bolts must be removed evenly. Once the bolts are out, the connector can be gently pulled away from the engine. It is important to note that there is also a hose attached to the bottom of the connector that cannot be seen while it is fully mounted. The only way to access this hose is by loosening the connector and pulling it slightly away from the engine. Once it is moved, the bottom hose becomes visible and can be disconnected. After all hoses are disconnected, the connector can be fully removed. With the connector off, the old rubber seal is clearly visible. In my case the seal was cracked and pinched, which explains the coolant leak. This is a very common issue on these Escapes. The replacement water connector does not come fully assembled, so there is a service hose that needs to be transferred from the old connector to the new one. This hose should be carefully removed and installed onto the new connector, making sure it is fully seated. Before installing the new connector, the mounting surface on the engine must be cleaned thoroughly. Any dirt residue or old coolant left behind can prevent proper sealing. I cleaned the area using brake cleaner and a clean cloth to ensure the surface was smooth and dry. Once cleaned, I positioned the new connector onto the engine, making sure it sat flush against the mounting surface. The 4 bolts were then installed and tightened evenly. Over-tightening should be avoided because the connector is plastic and can crack. After securing the connector, I reconnected the bottom hose followed by the heater core hose and the upper radiator hose and repositioned the clamps correctly. Once the hoses were secured, I reinstalled the intake components by reconnecting the intake pipe to the throttle body, plugging the map sensor back in and securing the air filter housing. With everything back in place, the radiator drain plug was closed and the cooling system was refilled with coolant slowly to reduce trapped air. The engine was then started and allowed to reach operating temperature while monitoring for leaks. I checked around the connector and hoses and confirmed there were no leaks present. The coolant level was topped off as needed. This water connector assembly is a known weak point on the 2008 Ford Escape, and replacing it when leaks appear helps prevent overheating and further engine issues. Taking the time to use proper tools, clean surfaces and follow each step carefully results in a reliable repair.